When the world shrugged off its heroes, he figured, why not go full villain? Might as well give nightmares something to be scared of. He wrapped up the Demon Lord saga solo, only to get backstabbed harder than a reality show contestant. Fate hit rewind. Eyes popped open in the same judgment hall where the backstabbing began. The tribunal stared down like he'd just eaten the last slice of pizza. Criminal behavior, apparently. The panel downgraded his resume. No more Supreme Commander, no High Marshal, just the lonely title of S-Class hero hanging by a thread. Oh, and if war breaks out, he'd be shipped back into battle, no questions, no snacks. He stood there, unbothered, like betrayal was just another Tuesday. Out of nowhere, a system prompt blinked in classic plot twist timing. Mission, rebuild humanity, checked off like a grocery list item. 2 options glowed: be the hero they ghosted or become the monster they warned their kids about. If they wouldn't get him, he might as well become their new bedtime horror story. No hesitation, no drama. Monster path it was. He ditched the S-Class badge like last season's fashion. The hall, absolute pandemonium. Judges yelling, papers flying, 10/10 meltdown. The judge thundered, demanding answers. He responded with a silent walk-off like a mic drop in slow motion. For once his face didn't scream stress, just peace, the suspicious kind. The judge wasn't done barking, wanted the powers gone too, probably jealous. Humanity really pushed its only level 13 hero, like he was a disposable NPC. One icy, fine later, the temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. Then he paused, lifted his hand. Cue suspense music and collective gasps. Every last drop of his power began clustering like a storm with purpose. The whole hall trembled like it owed the energy money. The pressure got so intense, even the air tapped out. Boom, a flash lit the sky like someone cranked the sun to max. In full dramatic flair, he tossed his powers back to humanity like a refund from Olympus. 10 quiet minutes later, mask off, power drained, and his expression screamed, "Not my problem anymore." Suddenly the sky got sliced open by a flashy red laser. No big deal. Next thing he knew, Teleport Express dumped him in a level 4 rift, home sweet hive. Deep in the creepy crawl space, reset to level 1. Zyokyu blinked at his stats like they had personally insulted him. He, D, once walked the hero's path right into the apocalypse, and still didn't get a thank you card. Now towing the line of total monsterdom, something flickered inside. No, not guilt. Just good all anticipation. Like opening a mystery loot box. Right on cue, a level 2 raid squad marched in and locked eyes on the level 1 newcomer. Their stares sparkled with the energy of people about to roast someone. The captain's smirk said it all. Someone clearly took a wrong turn on the way to the beginner zone. The squad cracked up like it was open mic night. Only the healer offered a soft wince and muttered that the captain had a bit of a direct style. Ignore him, the vibe said. And once the fight kicked off, their teamwork was cleaner than a speedrun. The mage started mumbling incantations like a fantasy podcast. Spells popped off immediately. Meanwhile, the archer landed shots like their arrows had GPS. The warrior dashed forward, carving through enemies like he was clearing his weekend to-do list. Chan tiptoed over and hinted that his stats were basically screaming, "Please be a mage." Her tip was cut short. Next thing she knew, she was yanked into a spontaneous bear hug. Right then, the floor decided to reenact a Michael Bay scene. A shadow spider's claw sliced through the air, just missing her by a heartbeat. The team blinked. By the time their brains caught up, Zyokyu had ripped off a spider leg and used it to redecorate its skull. Everyone who laughed earlier, now stuck on mute, jaws somewhere near their shoelaces. With the threat gone, she was still latched onto his shirt like it was a life vest. A gentle nudge brought her back to earth. Cue the awkward blushing and hasty retreat. Then came the system pop-up. Shadow Spider down, 500 XP served fresh. Apparently, going full monster didn't cancel his XP subscription. It was the same system that had once power-leveled him into legend. Now with his memories intact and skills loaded, the idea of his new monster build, deliciously terrifying. While they picked through loot like bargain hunters, the topic of Mask came up again. Their take, Mask was basically cosplay with an ego. Some even threw around terms like civilian slicer. Harsh. Zyokyu, totally silent, not even a twitch. He kept his poker face, but the girl he'd saved stepped up, mentioning a demonic outbreak, infected civilians, and Mask being cornered. The group responded with all the grace of trolls. Cue the sarcastic clapping and paid fangirl accusations. And yet hearing that someone still had his back, his eyes flickered with the tiniest spark. No, it wasn't dust. The party descended to the rift's final level, Akka the boss's living room. Then out skittered a skyscraper-sized spider, looking way too ready for company. The captain threw down the ultimate call, full send. Everyone went full anime mode, attacks flying like confetti at a parade. Turns out, teamwork makes the spider go down faster than a Wi-Fi outage. Celebration mode activated. Clean sweep. Not even one dramatic bandage needed. Zyokyu didn't join the dance party. Something about this level 4 rift felt suspiciously level 1. No loot drop, suspicion meter now officially blinking red. Then came the clicks, ominous, echoing, and totally horror movie certified. A schoolgirl stumbled in, looking like she took a wrong turn out of a creepy anime. Spear guy saw damsel, charged in like a hero, and instantly got webbed like last night's leftovers. Her wounds burst open, not with blood, but with silk. Nope, definitely not schoolgirl vibes. The silk didn't just bind, it unarmored him. Permanently. The warlock didn't wait. Fire chant go. Firestorm activated. She got the full barbecue treatment. Then the flames parted, revealing a nightmare with legs, too many legs. Spear guy tried to bail, but got pinned to the wall like an unfortunate sticky note. Creepy-crawly nightmare girl kept moving, slow, steady, and way too calm. Silk launched again. This time, the archer went full marionette, dangling like a decorative ornament. She opened her nightmare mouth and yoink. One party member became dinner. The captain let out a battle cry and swung like his life, and XP depended on it. And still, not even a scratch. It was like hitting a tank with a pool noodle. Just as her claw came in for seconds, Zyokyu finally stepped in. He caught the captain's sword midair like it was nothing, then launched himself skyward. With one clean slash, the binding limb was history. Strangely, the monster didn't counter, she just stopped. No moves, no roars. Just intense, silent staring like a final boss with a memory glitch. The warlock's horror meter officially maxed out. She noped right out of there, full sprint, zero dignity. But Zyokyu knew she wasn't lucky. She was allowed to flee. After all, fear isn't just fun for monsters, it's seasoning. And this one, a connoisseur of terror. Beasts blessed by the void gods weren't your average cave mobs. They were twisted, terrifying, and came with way too many status effects. Zyokyu had once taken down gods themselves, before life hit him with the Betrayal DLC. The monster hunched down, looming like a boss cutscene in 4K. It exhaled, an air freshener from the pits of despair. The warlock dropped like a sack of regrets. Chan-Chan barely stayed upright, but Zyokyu, cool as ever, pressure didn't touch him. He might have reset to level 1, but his brain, still running on level 13 pro mode. The tension unlocked something wild. His secret monster form stirred. The air buzzed, the world warped, and his body, definitely not following patch notes anymore. Boom, monster mode, ON. The whole dungeon freaked out like it knew something bad just spawned. This beast dares snarl at me, his presence seemed to whisper. Count yourself lucky, his aura practically said. Few get to see this and live. In the rubble stood Zyokyu, reborn as a full-on demon god flex. The very air bent around him like even physics didn't want smoke. The spider creature froze. This wasn't in her evolution chart. Its blank expression cracked. Fear finally made it look alive. Instinct took over, she bolted. Smart move, wrong opponent. Zyokyu crouched like he was about to start a race, then blinked out in red flash. Next frame, he's just casually holding one of her legs. Decent leg, he said, like critiquing a baguette. Bit oversized, though, he added, totally unbothered. The monster screamed, panicked, silk spamming like a boss on 5% HP. But spider silk doesn't catch lightning, and that's what he'd become. Another flash, another leg. Was he collecting these? This is your final form? Weak. He sneered like a villain with better gear. Wow, and here I thought you'd put up a fight, he muttered, almost disappointed. One blink later, he was already midair, a blur of fury. Squelch, yeah, that was something vital. Crack, goodbye, exoskeleton integrity. RIP limbs, optional now. Only one leg left, shaking like Wi-Fi at 1% signal. In her terrified eyes, he was the final boss. The monster was done. Fight or flight had downgraded to just flee. Terror had taken over. No thoughts, just run. She bounced away on her last leg like a cursed pogo stick. But mercy, not part of Zyokyu's skill tree. One hit, One thunderous, soul-ending strike. She hit the floor like a nightmare meeting gravity. He chuckled, low, icy, the kind that makes horror music play. "Funny, you played with humans and never thought your game would end," he whispered. Then boom, he ended it with one god-tier stomp. The whole rift shivered like a glitch in the Matrix. System final boss, deleted. Congrats, Overlord. System Rift Level 4, cleaned out. System loot dropped, Spider Fiend limb, rare. Survivors teleporting in 3-2. Light blasted him like a warp zone. When it cleared, he was smack in the middle of downtown. Skyscrapers everywhere. Once he'd faced gods, monsters, even the universe itself. But now he stood paralyzed, staring at a studios for rent sign. A cheap listing, but his pockets empty, the former S-Class hero, struggling with rent. In the past, his life was one endless monster-slaying spree. No chores, no bills, no worries. But here, he had to figure out how to do normal. Just then, someone broke his thoughts. Enter Yan Xiangxian, Aka, the girl who barely made it out of the rift with her life intact. She spotted him standing there like a confused NPC, grinned, and casually strolled over. Upon hearing his predicament, Xiangxian, ever the sweetheart, offered him a place to crash. At the door, Zyro Q's eyes snagged on a piece of metal hanging above. His curiosity piqued. Turns out that metal wasn't just decoration. Xiangxian's dad had been a soldier, not just any soldier, though. A level 5, hardcore professional. Sadly, after his military days, his life force dwindled fast, and he passed away soon after. Zyro Q, who'd long since numbed his emotions, felt a rare, quiet sting at the news. As Xiangxian prepped the guest room, her sister, Kyan Lu, rolled in, suspicion written all over her face. Kyan Lu tensed up, muttered something about guests, and retreated, leaving the room a bit off. Xiangxian scratched her head, apologizing for her sister's vibe, but Zyro Q, he just smiled. Zyro Q smiled lightly. Meanwhile, back in her room, Kyan Lu was busy digging through the internet, only to find the mask getting trashed. Fuming, Kyan Lu cracked her knuckles, went online, and began roasting the haters back. "Without Lord Mask, we'd all be eaten by darkness," she fired off. Who'd have guessed? Kyan Lu was a Mask superfan. A bit later, the aroma of dinner filled the air. Time to eat. Zyro Q took his first bite of the simple, home-cooked meal. His mind flashed back to the chaos of border battles. Back then, the beast meat was bland, just fuel for the fight, but nothing beat this. It was warm, it felt human. In no time, the rice bowls were empty. He'd cleaned the table. Then bang, 3 loud knocks shattered the calm. Someone was pounding the door like it owed them money. "Open up, or we'll burn this place to the ground." Xiangxian's face drained. "It's them," from Kai Jiang Investments. The door creaked, then bam. A group of thugs stormed in, demanding she sell. But Xiangxian wasn't budging. "This house is not for sale." The scar-faced leader flashed a wicked grin. He knew she'd drained her savings for her sister's treatment. He smirked again, dropping the original offer of 3 million to just 100,000. Before leaving, he spat on the floor. 5 days after that, no more nice, he warned. This wasn't just shady business. They were forcing the sale. Finally, Zyro Q stepped forward, his eyes as cold as ice. Seeing a stranger, Scarface shoved past Xiangxian, eager to start a fight. He extended a hand, pretending to be all polite, but the second their hands touched, his face twisted. Scarface was a mental typecaster, ready to dominate Zyro Q's mind in a heartbeat. But with just one look, he was sucked into an ocean of consciousness, deep, endless, and crushing. Terror hit him like a wave. He tried to run, but a colossal psychic blast devoured him whole. From the depths, eyes emerged, eyes that saw everything, eyes that belonged to no human. Under that gaze, Scarface screamed, "Monster!" It was a monster, and then he was gone, collapsed. His mind shattered, the crowd, frozen, 3 mentalists wiped out by a handshake. The others knew it immediately. They were no match for him. No words, just grabbing Scarface and running for their lives. Zyro Q frowned. "The government offers nothing to soldiers' kids." Xiangxian shook her head. "To suck up to the big real estate guys, they ignore us. Forget about benefits. We're treated like we're invisible." The harassment, 4 years of it, and they were barely hanging on. Zyro Q muttered, "So that's it. Monsters aren't the only thing ruining this world." After the thugs left, he quietly grabbed a broom. After all he'd been eating, sleeping, living under their roof, seemed only right to pitch in. But then a familiar system chime rang out. "New mission, Enter the level 4 rift, Hall of the Seven Knights. A pulse of energy shot through the room. A glowing teleportation gate flickered into existence in the corner. Zio Q stepped forward, letting out a soft sigh. This system's too efficient. No applications, no inspections, just do the job. This time the target was clear, the Seven-Night Mantis. He looked around. Towering cathedrals, stone walls, flickering torches. It was a medieval European vibe. But what really waited? Something way worse. A stellar gargoyle lurking in the shadows at the end of the hall. At first they looked like statues, but step too close and their stone shells shattered, revealing fangs, claws, and eyes that hunted. Thick hides, high resistance to magic. These gargoyles, nightmares for regular fighters, but unlucky for them. They ran into Zio Q. A suffocating aura exploded. In a blink, he morphed into a demon god. One gargoyle lunged at him. He casually reached out, grabbed its neck, and ripped its head right off. At the corridor's end, thick mist clung to the walls of an ancient cathedral. Dozens, maybe hundreds of gargoyles waited, silent in the dark. Zio Q stepped forward. Dozens of crimson eyes lit up in unison. The sound of crumbling stone echoed through the hall as their shells shattered like glass. Zio Q's voice, ice cold. "Let's go." All at once, the monsters surged into the air, swarming him like a storm. He didn't flinch. Instead, he crouched, then shot straight up like a bullet. In his eyes, these creatures weren't even a threat. They were just XP on legs. XP on legs. Every move, every strike. Squads of gargoyles wiped out in an instant. As he locked eyes with the last of the monsters, their terror didn't faze him. His gaze, cold as ice. They were just getting what was coming to them. Still, something felt off to Zio Q. Gargoyles, at least in his memory, weren't supposed to feel anything. Doubt didn't slow him down. The last creature crumbled to dust. Then the final boss emerged from the shadows. It had a human shape, a human face, and that only fueled Zio Q's bloodlust. In a flash, they collided, steel and shadow tearing through the air. Moments later, the dust cleared. The boss was pinned to a stone pillar, lifeless. Meanwhile, a group of adventurers stepped into the rift. They froze, staring at the wrecked cathedral. Shattered remains everywhere. Shock spread across every face. Who could have done all this alone? Elsewhere, Kyan walked into the black market with a longsword, hoping to sell it for money to treat her sister's legs. But the merchants, vultures, offering almost nothing. All she could do was swallow her frustration. Just then, Zio Q stepped out of the rift. Seeing the scene, Zio Q didn't hesitate. He took all the money he'd made selling materials and bought the sword himself. He placed a thick stack of cash on the counter, but Kyan didn't reach for it, even though she desperately needed it. Zio Q eyed the blade in his hand. "This sword isn't what it seems," he said softly. "It's worth way more than this." He nudged the cash toward her. "Take it." When he learned she'd sold it to pay for her sister's treatment, his heart sank. During that disastrous battle, Chinlio's legs had been caught in the edge of a radiation blast. Once a swordsmanship prodigy, now barely alive, sustained only by top-tier healers. And Xian, who once followed in her father's warrior footsteps, had given it up to be a support-class healer. Zio Q frowned. "After the cataclysm, I ordered the Federation to fund protection for every survivor." Xian just shook her head. "We never saw a single coin." Zio Q's gaze darkened. This was the world he'd chosen to fight against. Choosing the path of a monster had never felt more right. When he returned to Xian's house, what he saw made the blood in his veins freeze. The front door was shattered, and Qianliu lay unconscious in the yard. "Qianliu," Xian cried, rushing to her side. Luckily, she was alive, just knocked out cold. Earlier that day, the thugs from Kaijiang Investments had come back. Their pounding echoed through the house. Hearing the noise, Qin Liu had grabbed her wooden practice sword and wheeled herself to the door. When no one answered, bang, the door was kicked open. Iron rods in hand, they stormed inside. Seeing only Qin Liu, they began mocking her without holding back. Furious, Qianliu lifted her sword and swung. But her legs buckled. She crashed to the ground. Pain shot through her body, and one desperate thought echoed in her mind. "If only I weren't crippled." One of the men stepped forward, sneering. "A little cripple like you thinks you can fight back." He barked an order. "Trash the place." They ransacked the house, tearing through every room. No sign of Zio Q or Qian anywhere. One of them chuckled darkly. "Let's take the girl. That'll bring him running. Kidnapping too far, man. That'll get us arrested. One of the goons spoke up, and only then did they pull back. But as they turned to leave, one of them snarled, "Tell Zyro Q, we're not done with him yet." Back home, Kayan asked Zyro Q to take Kayan Liu inside. She stayed behind to clean up the mess. But just as she turned around, crash. A garbage truck slammed into the yard wall, dumping its entire load into the garden. Kayan stood, fists clenched in fury, surrounded by stinking filth. "Sister," Kayan Liu screamed, desperately trying to move. But Zyro Q stopped her. "Let her be," he said softly. "If you go now, it'll only hurt her more." Kayan Liu's voice shook. "This world, why is it so cruel? Is there no justice?" Zyro Q stared out at the rain, his gaze cold and unwavering. Justice didn't exist. And fairness, it's a lie sold by those who built this rotten world. Kayan Liu couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears streamed down her face as she broke down in sobs. Zyro Q said nothing. He reached for the blade resting against the wall. He turned, stepping into the storm. This time he wasn't just angry. He was done playing nice. If the world had no justice, he would become the reckoning. Flames roared in his chest. The powerful preyed on the weak. Even the children of heroes were crushed under greed. And now they would pay. Zyro Q strode alone into Kaijiang Tower. The guards at the door shouted threats. He ignored them, walking right past. Before they could finish speaking, their bodies exploded into chunks of gore. Panic surged through the building. Dozens of goons rushed in, surrounding him. The system chimed in. Mission activated. Blood tribute to the demon blade. Slay all hostile beings. Feed their blood to Fia. Begin purification. In a flash, Zyro Q vanished. He reappeared behind two men. Heads rolled. Blood rained down as more fools charged forward. Zyro Q turned, slow and deliberate. One glance and they froze in pure terror. One slash. No life remained. Minutes later, the lobby was drowned in a sea of blood. A hellscape, limbs scattered in eerie silence. Screams echoed as the survivors fled in blind terror. Meanwhile, inside the top-floor office, Kaijiang's executives laughed, toasting their impending victory over Chanshan. Suddenly, a panicked voice screamed through the hall. "Someone's inside, killing everyone. Someone dares to attack us," they sneered. "Let's see who's got a death wish." Weapons drawn, they marched toward the source of the noise. But Zyro Q was already waiting at their door. Waiting for him were 3 Level 4 professionals. Zyro Q let out a soft sigh. Staying in human form is such a hassle. He raised a hand. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Panic erupted as the hallway turned icy cold and eerily silent. Shadows coiled around Zyro Q as he morphed into the demon. One of the men activated his night vision, and what he saw wasn't human. He screamed, raising both guns and firing wildly. But Zyro Q had already disappeared into the shadows. A moment later, a blade sank deep into his chest. With one down, Zyro Q spun and cleaved toward the second. The axe wielder reacted just in time, raising his weapon with all his strength to block the strike. For a split second, he thought he'd survived. Then a cold shiver ran down his neck. His head soared from his shoulders. His body crumpled to the floor, lifeless. 300. In the depths of darkness, Zyro Q reigned unchallenged. Those who dared resist were mere insects, crushed beneath his heel. He moved like a god of destruction, their strongest attacks crumbling at the mere flick of his hand. Each slash cleaved through flesh, claiming another head. With every drop of blood spilled, Fia drank deep, its dormant power awakening with a thirst for more. Just as Zyro Q moved forward for more, a thunderous shout echoed, freezing him in his tracks. At the top of the stairs, a level 6 professional stood, his presence overwhelming. The man's presence was crushing, but Zyro Q didn't flinch. Instead, the newcomer studied him, intrigued. Not human, yet not a monster either. A hybrid something, in between. His eyes gleamed with greed. He could fetch a fortune on the black market. A twisted grin spread across his face, possession, profit, power, all his. All his, without warning he vanished, sword in hand. In the next instant, a blinding slash ripped through the air, aimed directly at Zyro Q's head. He didn't budge, only tilted his head, just enough to avoid the full strike. Still, the blade grazed him, leaving a bloody gash across his cheek. The swordsman's eyes widened in disbelief. "You dodged that?" A knowing smirk formed. He had found Zyro Q's limit. He lunged faster than before, his sword a blur. Another slash followed. Then a storm of blades filled the air. 10 slashes, each screaming toward Zyro-Q. Zyro-Q blocked what he could, but there were too many to deflect. Cuts tore across his arms and torso, the blood staining his skin, but none of them were deep enough to slow him. The swordsman grinned, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Unbelievable. You truly are a humanoid monster, he sneered. He gathered every ounce of his strength. Every ounce of mana surged into his blade, crackling with power. One final strike, a deadly thrust aimed straight at Zyro-Q's heart. Zyro-Q shifted, narrowly dodging the lethal blow. But then the man smiled again, this time strangely, a revolver appearing in his left hand. He raised it, aiming straight at Zyro-Q's head. Click! Bang! The shot landed dead center, right between his eyes. At point-blank range, the swordsman smirked, confident that he'd never missed a shot. But when the smoke cleared, Zyro-Q remained untouched, standing there as if nothing had happened. The man's smug confidence cracked, his eyes flickering with doubt. True fear crept into his eyes, raw and unbidden. Zyro-Q scoffed. Impressive technique, he said mockingly. But I didn't expect you to use my own creation, the 19 thrusts against me. Did no one teach you? That sword style was meant for justice, not slaughter. The man blinked, then sneered. That move belongs to Mask, the hero. You're just a delusional monster. He spat, his words dripping with contempt. And you think you can preach justice to me? Zyro-Q's smile turned to ice. Killing monsters like you, that is justice. Maybe I am a monster, Zyro-Q continued, his voice dripping with disdain. But how many lives have you ruined in the name of justice? Anyone who stands in the way of progress, whether man or beast, deserves to die. And I will always stand on the side of justice. The swordsman lunged again, his blade aimed directly at Zyro-Q. But Zyro-Q's eyes had gone as cold as death. No anger, no sorrow, only resolve. If this is the justice you speak of, Zyro-Q said, then let me show you what it means to destroy it. Crack! With a sickening crack, 8 jagged bone spikes erupted from his back. They shot forward like lethal spears. A deadly barrage. The man's stoic expression shattered. He leapt, rolling to avoid the deadly barrage, scrambling desperately through the corridor. But the barrage of bone spikes was relentless. One by one, they tore through his body, shredding flesh and bone. With a deafening crash, he was pinned to the wall, blood trickling down the cold stone. Zyro-Q approached slowly, his gaze fixed coldly on the self-proclaimed hero. Do you still think you're justice? Do you still think you're justice? He asked, his voice devoid of any mercy. The man's eyes widened in disbelief, struggling to accept the truth. The monster before him was the legendary Mask. But Zyro-Q didn't give him the time to process it. With a single, swift flash of his blade, the man's head fell to the ground, rolling into the pool of blood. Fia trembled in his grip, emitting a low, resonating hum that seemed to vibrate the very air. Blood from the floor spiraled upward, drawn into the blade like a living, writhing stream of life force. A system notification flashed. Fia has evolved. Unlocked growth-type skill, Blood Fia. Zyro-Q tightened his grip on the blade, his fingers coiling around it like a predator's claws. It looked the same, yet in his palm it pulsed with life, its power thrumming beneath his skin. A blade that could grow without end, limitless in its hunger. Just like me, he whispered, his voice dark and heavy with meaning. The lone surviving grunt collapsed, trembling, his body frozen in pure terror. Zyro-Q said nothing. He simply raised Fia and brought it down in a single, effortless motion. Outside, the city's defense forces had encircled the building, ready for a confrontation. The commander looked up at the sky, watching as it split open under the force of the sword energy. Hold your positions, he barked. No sudden moves, we can't risk harming civilians. Then with a bitter laugh, he muttered, not that there's a single innocent soul left in that tower. As Zyro-Q stepped out, his body soaked in blood, he made no move to flee. He surrendered not out of fear, but to see how humanity would judge him this time. Meanwhile, Kayan had just rushed out of her house, having heard of Zyro-Q's brutal attack. But soldiers blocked her path immediately, halting her progress. Ms. Yan Kayan, one of them said coldly, you're required for questioning. Inside the city guard's interrogation chamber, Commander Jiang sat, his brow furrowed in frustration. Aside from a name and a confession about the attack, there was no trace of Zyro-Q. No history. No history. Stranger still, A suspect bearing the same name was wanted by the Rift Monitoring Bureau, linked to the illegal seizure of the Yen family's property. Director Arthur appeared in person, his eyes cold as steel. "You have two choices," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Immediate execution or redemption on the front lines. Kill enough monsters and you'll earn your place in society again." Xiao chuckled darkly. "So in your world, fighting monsters is considered a punishment." The memories flooded back, the blood, the battles, the betrayal. His eyes turned to ice. Arthur slammed his fist on the table. "Peace isn't free," he growled. "Your unauthorized rift access could ignite a global panic." But Xiao no longer listened. His gaze was fixed on the glowing prompt before him, his mind already elsewhere. Main quest activated. Eliminate the reborn Great Defiler. He already knew. The true catastrophe was just beginning. In his past life, the so-called catastrophe-class monster had emerged, obliterating an entire city in its wake. Even after he destroyed it with a single punch, its radiation lingered, searching for a new host to rise once more. At the time, he had already been convicted, but they still sent him into the disaster zone. When it reappeared, the world blamed him. It was the mask's fault the monster came back. Xiao closed his eyes, his resolve hardening. This time there would be no hero, no mask, only the monster named Xiao, and humanity's fate no longer mattered to him. Inside the Federation's war room, the debate was growing heated. A blonde officer shook his head, his voice tinged with regret. "What a waste! A young genius lost." A rotund councilman slammed his fist onto the table. "He destroyed an entire tower. He must be executed. Justice demands it." The blonde officer cut through the chaos. "Assign him to the Redemption Corps. Send him to the front lines." Meanwhile, outside the chamber, Chen Liu's voice roared with fury. "Asked to testify against Xiao," she shouted. "He punished scum, not innocents. If he's a criminal, then what about those who ruined entire families? Where are they?" Xinlu's voice cracked, her anger raw. Commander Jiang responded quietly. "Justice must be delivered by law, not vigilantes." "And where is that law?" Xinlu screamed. "If even resistance is wrong, then this whole world is what's wrong." Her voice echoed down the corridor, but no one answered. Only silence lingered. Chan stood nearby, helplessly watching her sister unravel. She understood the pain, the helpless rage, but she could no longer find the strength to scream. As the sisters faded into the distance, Commander Jiang sighed, a deep, weary exhale. "Anger may be a sign of helplessness," he mused, "but sometimes it's also a source of true strength. If that girl could rise again, she could become something truly powerful." Back home, Kayan whispered softly, "Kayan Liu, just rest. Leave everything else to me." But in her room, Kayan Liu's eyes were vacant, hollow. Alone in her wheelchair, she murmured to herself, "If sunlight can never reach the dark, then what's the point of the sun at all?" Her legs trembled, but she reached out, finding her balance as she slowly stood. Chanchian turned, stunned, unable to believe what her eyes were seeing. But in the next instant, Qing Liu's voice shattered the silence. "Sister, run!" Her arm twisted grotesquely, splitting into black, thorny vines that lashed out toward Chanchian. She had become the very thing they feared most. A monster, the air grew thick with dread. The cursed aura returned, suffocating the room. Commander Jiang felt it, a dark shiver running down his spine. He knew the Defiler had been reborn. On the streets, life went on as if nothing had changed. No one knew the truth. Death had already arrived, cloaked in shadows. By the roadside, a flower bed came to life, as buds began to bloom. A gentle breeze swept through, and in an instant every flower burst open. Petals drifted through the air, like the end of the world masquerading as spring. A bee landed on a petal, and in that moment its entire body erupted in bloom. Even the flowers already in bloom sprouted new blossoms, as if touched by an unseen force. A man stood, admiring the garden, unaware of the horrors about to unfold. In a heartbeat, his body erupted into a mass of flowers, twisting into a grotesque, unrecognizable creature. The next person who touched him disintegrated, their body breaking apart into petals, carried away by the wind. As the petals continued to spread, people finally realized the entire city was under siege. Anyone touched by even a single petal was either transformed into a flowering husk or reduced to nothing but petals themselves. A seasoned professional witnessed the chaos and stepped forward, brimming with confidence. Before him, the monster was nothing but a writhing mass of petals. He swung his weapon with all his might. The blade sliced through, splitting the creature in two. The crowd cheered, but their joy was short-lived. A wave of green energy erupted from the corpse. The hero was the next victim. Flowers bloomed from his chest and limbs, twisting him into one of the creatures. As the green glow spread, realization hit like a tidal wave. The great defiler had returned, and panic erupted across the streets. Commander Jiang arrived at the scene, his face dark with grim understanding. "Don't underestimate them," he growled, surveying the chaos. "Monsters have evolved beyond anything we could have imagined. These infected flowered are highly contagious. Touch one, and it's already too late." Across the city, the monsters mutated once more. They grew larger faster, more ferocious with each passing moment. They began devouring civilians whole, their screams swallowed by the chaos. Watching the destruction spiral beyond control, Commander Jiang finally gave the order. "Deploy the ultimate weapon," he commanded, his voice cold and firm. Commander Jiang took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing as his resolve solidified. He opened his mouth, and a massive fire dragon erupted from his throat, its flames roaring into the sky. The fiery beast tore down the street, scorching everything in its path with searing heat. The flowered monsters stood no chance, turning to ash in an instant, their screams drowned in the inferno. For a brief, fleeting moment, hope flickered, but as the ash drifted through the air and settled on the survivors, they began to change. Their bodies twisted grotesquely, corrupted by the very force they had survived. Their eyes glazed over, vacant and lifeless. And like the others, they became monsters, creatures of flesh and terror. Commander Jiang froze, his fists clenched. Only dread and guilt filled his chest. The city was lost, its soul consumed by the darkness. In its place, a blooming green hell had arisen. The few remaining survivors huddled beneath shields of radiant light, clinging to the faintest shred of hope. Director Arthur arrived moments later, his eyes empty as he stared at the nightmare before him. Just hours ago, this had been a thriving city. Now it was a graveyard blooming with death. Jiang barked into his comms, his voice edged with fury and despair. "Cease all weapon use," Jiang ordered, his voice cold and final. "Immediately," he continued. "A single petal, a speck of infected ash can wipe out everything." Arthur's voice trembled. "This aura, it's the defiler, I'm certain of it, but it's supposed to be dead. How is it back?" he whispered, unable to comprehend. Jiang's face drained of color. "Some monsters don't die," he muttered grimly. "Even reduced to dust, they endure. They come back. They're like the immortal jellyfish, creatures that defy death, reincarnating endlessly. To truly destroy them, we must eliminate both the creature and every lingering trace it leaves behind." This city didn't fall due to weakness. It fell because the radiation left by the defiler anchored its resurrection. Arthur slammed his fist on the table, his fury boiling over. "Those damn parasites. Lord Mask warned us over and over. Clean every trace, heal every victim, leave nothing behind." They stood before him, swearing oaths, making promises. But the moment he was gone, they revealed their true faces. They stole the relief funds meant for the infected, ignored the radiation, and buried the evidence. Arthur trembled with fury, but what good was rage now? Commander Jiang rose, his posture rigid. His voice was calm but resolute. "From this moment forward, I will take responsibility for humanity's defense. The defiler hasn't regained full strength yet. Now is our only chance. If we wait, the cost will be far worse." Meanwhile, news of the catastrophe spread across the globe, like wildfire. But as the world watched the footage, no one asked about the survivors, only the horror. Instead, their focus shifted. "Where is Mask?" they demanded, voices trembling with desperation. What about the people still trapped in the city? No one cared. The calls online grew louder, more frantic, but their focus never wavered. "Mask won't abandon us," they repeated like a prayer. "He'll come, he has to come." They didn't speak of the dying or the burning city, the screams that echoed on the wind. They only waited, clinging to a fragile hope that seemed to wither by the minute. Selfish, entitled, blind, the words felt hollow in the silence. Meanwhile, Commander Jiang surged through the city, a blur of fury, thunder, and steel, cutting a path through the chaos. The monsters lunged at him, but they shattered like glass upon contact, their screams lost in the storm of destruction. He stopped suddenly. Ahead, a crumbling tower loomed, its heart a colossal, blooming monstrosity. Atop it stood a lone figure, silhouetted against the unnatural bloom. Jiang's eyes widened in disbelief, his breath catching in his throat. It was her, the girl who had once cried out against injustice, now nothing but a shadow of the past. Qin Liu, but the girl he once knew was gone. In her place sat a queen of petals, crowned in ruin. A goddess of destruction, her very presence heralding the end. He hadn't seen her for hours, and now she was unrecognizable, a grotesque monument to what was lost. She looked down at him, her voice soft, almost mocking. "Do you regret now?" Jiang said nothing, his fist clenching so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Lightning exploded from his body in a burst of white-hot arcs, lashing across the sky like vengeful wrath. He roared, his voice filled with years of pain and rage. "I only regret not ending you when you were still in that wheelchair." In a blinding flash, Jiang's eyes ignited with raw, unrelenting power. A deadly beam surged forth from his gaze, crackling with destructive intent. Xianlu didn't flinch, her expression unchanged, like a statue carved from stone. She stood motionless, letting the beam tear through her skull without a hint of fear. As the beam faded, Jiang's brow furrowed, confusion creeping into his mind. The hole in her head began to heal, as if time itself bent to her will. Slowly, smoothly, and completely, Xianlu's lips curled into a smile, soft, cold, and full of malice. "Your attacks mean nothing to me," she whispered. "Before monsters who can end worlds, human strength is dust, and monsters like me, we're born from the greed of your kind." The terrifying regeneration, defying all logic, all known physics, left the onlookers speechless and paralyzed with fear. Jiang gritted his teeth, fury building within him, as he gathered lightning in both fists. Bolts of judgment rained from the heavens, a storm of divine fury unleashed upon her. Yet through it all, her form remained unbroken, untouched by the storm she had provoked. Every wound, every burn, healed as if they had never been there. In an instant, her grin widened. "So this is your so-called power to banish the darkness," she mocked. Zhang's instincts screamed, warning him of something far worse than they had yet faced. Danger massive, imminent. Without hesitation, he bolted backward, every nerve screaming for survival. Lightning crackled in his wake, leaving a trail of fury in the air. But in that same moment, she appeared behind him, as if materializing from the very shadows. Jiang reacted instantly, pushing his speed to the absolute limit, a blur of lightning streaking through the crumbling cityscape. Yet no matter how fast he ran, Qianliu was always there, just a step behind, relentless. And then it hit him like a strike of lightning. In this city blanketed in green, she was not just a presence. She was the city. She had merged with the plant system itself, becoming one with the very vines and flowers that thrived here. With a single thought, she could warp to any flower, any vine, any part of this living nightmare. In the control center, Arthur's face twisted with panic as the situation spiraled out of control. He slammed his fist against the console, his voice cracking with urgency. "Commander Jiang, get out of there now. The only option now is to nuke the entire zone," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. But Jiang already knew the grim truth. There was no escape, no salvation. Surrounded by flowered beasts bathed in lethal spores, his fate seemed sealed. This was his battlefield now, and he would fight until the end. Slowly, he removed his cloak. The mask insignia gleamed faintly, reflecting the last of his resolve before falling to the ground. He stared at it for a long moment before smiling softly. "I've lived enough." And in that instant, his power surged, like a tide rising against the inevitable. His life force ignited, burning with every breath he took, fueling the storm within him. Qian Liu's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing her cold demeanor. She hadn't expected this, and for the first time, doubt crossed her mind. He was ready to die, his final breath already on the horizon. She shook her head, a bitter smile curling her lips. "Such desperation," she murmured, her voice tinged with disdain. "Even now you still hope to win. You're nothing more than a cornered beast." She sneered, her eyes cold with superiority. "Pointless," she said, her voice like ice. "I can vanish with a single thought," she added, her tone laced with finality. But before she could finish, something interrupted her. A red flash split the sky, lighting up the entire city in a heartbeat. Half her body was obliterated in that instant, reduced to nothing but ashes. Qian Liu's pupils shrank in disbelief. He was faster than her thoughts, a blur of motion that outpaced even her mind. But for Commander Jiang, this strike came at a terrible cost. His skin tore with every movement, healing only to be ripped apart once more, an endless cycle of agony. Yet through it all, the city's energy did not falter. It surged, rising higher and faster, as if feeding off the destruction. Xianlu looked at him, this man burning his very life force just to remain standing. For once, she fell silent, her gaze heavy with something like respect or perhaps regret. Once upon a time, she too had dreamed of wielding such power, to carry a blade and protect the helpless. But if humans possessed that power, why had they allowed the helpless to rot in the dark? Why did they let the true heroes die alone, judged, forgotten, betrayed? She wondered, her voice quivering with the weight of 1,000 unspoken sorrows. Her sorrow blossomed, deep and endless, like an unrelenting tide. The flowered ones scattered across the city felt it, a shift in the air, a call. One by one, they turned, their eyes reflecting the call to something greater. They fled the battlefield, not in fear, but in obedience to her unseen command. The soldiers, hopeful, thought perhaps they had won. But then the realization hit. This was no retreat. It was a gathering of something much darker. She and Lu raised her hand, and every pulse, every petal answered, rushing toward her like a tidal wave. A wave of power erupted, tearing through the earth beneath them. The air itself seemed to collapse, as if the world was holding its breath. The very earth screamed from the depths of the flower sea, an agony that shook the heavens. And with it the defiler awakened, its presence a black hole that swallowed all hope. Its true form revealed itself, a nightmare incarnate, towering and endless. Jiang stood before it, his voice a whisper in the storm. "I know why," he murmured softly. "It's all because of this damn world," he said, his words carrying the weight of a lifetime of disappointment. "There's no justice left in a world like this," he continued, his tone dark with resignation. "Your so-called justice," Jiang whispered, "was always just a lie spoken by those who never cared. When death is everywhere, what's the point of living?" he asked, his voice a mournful echo. With those words, Jiang ignited his last remaining spark of life, forged it into a searing strike, and hurled it toward the defiler, a final desperate plea. The god did not flinch, standing unmoved, an immovable force. It raised one hand, effortlessly catching the blow as if it were no more than a passing breeze. But then something strange began to happen. Its hand started to unravel. Cracks appeared, spreading like veins of light in its form. Blinding light poured from the fissures, an unholy glow. Slowly its form began to fragment, the god itself beginning to crumble. Around the globe, the footage flooded in, showing the final moments of the battle. People screamed with joy, their hearts lifting at the sight of victory. "He did it," they cheered. "He won. Our hero saved us." The world rejoiced, believing the nightmare was over. But they were too quick in their celebration, too blind to the truth, too blind to see the danger that still loomed. They had forgotten what they were truly up against. A god of extinction, a force that could not be slain by mortal hands. "If this world is already rotten," the god spoke coldly, "then let it die. With you in it," it finished, its voice carrying the finality of death itself. The shattered limb exploded, giving birth to bloody red vines that writhed and twisted through the sky like serpents. The vines coiled around Jiang, binding him, imprisoning him without mercy. The defiler looked down at the small, stubborn man, its expression unchanged, as if indifferent to his defiance. And then, with a single, gentle squeeze, Jiang's body shattered into petals, scattered into the wind like dust. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. In the command center, Arthur crumpled into his chair, the weight of failure pressing down on him. The last hope had vanished. And now, who was left to save this broken world? Humanity had finally understood the truth. This was no mere disaster. It was a reckoning. They had lived too long in peace, oblivious to the cost. They had forgotten the reason for their safety, forgotten the hero they once cast aside, the man who paid their price with his very life. Only now did they remember the one who had once saved them all. Where was he now? Would he return? Did he even want to come back to this world? At that very moment, alarms blared throughout the Federation's highest security prison. Alert, catastrophic class entity has manifested. City destruction is imminent. In a dark, silent cell, a pair of eyes slowly opened, gleaming with forgotten intent. Xiao was awake. Meanwhile, chaos consumed the internet. Didn't they say we no longer needed masks, that the Federation could protect us? But reality shattered their delusions. The truth was clear. The leaders had hidden for too long, forgetting the cost of peace, a cost paid in blood by those they had discarded. And now they turned on each other. We were too harsh on mask. "It's our fault," someone murmured. Then came the new suggestion. "Drop the nukes. Sacrifice a few to save the many." The idea was approved, unanimously. One by one, their masks fell away, revealing what lay beneath: monsters. Even the speaker trembled, no longer fearing the defiler. What terrified him now was what humanity had become. Just then, a new message arrived from the front lines. Something had shifted. Could it be another hero? No, it wasn't a hero. It was a monstrous humanoid. In the city's military prison, a crack suddenly split the ceiling open, releasing a thick, blood-red mist as if hell itself had torn through. The prison guard inside froze in terror, paralyzed by the horrific sight. He could only stare in disbelief as Zio Q emerged from the rift, slipping free into the world. Outside, the entire city had been overtaken by an eerie, sprawling green vegetation. Soldiers fought desperately to hold their ground against the advancing tide of monsters. Then, in the blink of an eye, a blood-red shadow streaked past the soldiers. In its wake, the monsters' root systems were severed, torn apart like brittle weeds in a storm. It was Zio Q, now transformed into a demon god, breaking free from his cage. Suddenly, a system alert echoed in his mind. A main quest had been triggered. Monster Path. Main quest. The rebirth of the Great Blight. Quest description. A once-destroyed cataclysmic monster has returned. The shadow of annihilation looms once again. Or perhaps this is something entirely new. Objective: eliminate the new cataclysm, the Great Blight. Reward: core of the Blight. Zio Q studied the creature, sensing its aura. This was no mere echo of the past. The former Great Blight had been a creature of rot and ruin. But this one radiated life. The kind of primal life that thrived in ancient jungles, in tropical growths, vines, and towering trees, growing unchecked, sprawling without end. It didn't just expand, it consumed. Everything in its path had to grow with it or be devoured by it. Mountains, oceans, deserts, cities. The entire planet was fertile ground for it. No sorrow, no pain, only wild, ecstatic growth. And all life would drown in the ecstasy of this twisted rebirth. The old Great Blight had been pure evil, but this new incarnation was evil refined, its exalted, perfected form. But no matter what it had become, to claim the Blight's heart, to gain the power to face those beasts from the void in the future, I must destroy it. At that moment, Chinlu, now fully the Great Blight, whispered, "To live in this filthy world is endless suffering. Join me. Surrender to me with devotion, and I will lead you to a world without sorrow, without pain, without injustice." She had fused entirely with the flowers, the creatures bound to her will. She could feel it. She was no longer just herself. She had assimilated everything, and no matter their origins, all were now equally beautiful in her mind. Only one feeling remained: the ecstasy of life's pulse. Soon, many more who suffered would be welcomed into this emotionless paradise. But then her eyes snapped open and her voice turned razor-sharp. "South of here, my children, my entire cluster has vanished." Her rage exploded. "Who dares? Who dares slay my children? They will not be spared." In that instant, Zio Q broke through the carnage, standing before her. That's when he saw it. The monster was She's younger sister. Without hesitation, Zio Q surged forward, sprinting along the massive root system, charging straight toward the core. Lu recoiled in disbelief. Why? Why hasn't he been assimilated? That aura, he's not human, but even monsters can't resist my assimilation. As she spotted Zio Q clinging to her arm, she roared, swinging her massive hand down at him. "Get off me!" Her colossal palm came crashing down, inches from seizing him. But Zio Q slashed upward in a lightning-fast arc. The massive hand shattered into fragments. But before he could even breathe, a horde of flower-like monsters swarmed at him from all directions. The flower-like monsters began to glow with a blinding green light, then exploded in a fiery cascade right before Zio Q, hoping to take him down with them. Fortunately, Zio Q's movements were lightning fast, dodging each explosion just before they detonated. In mere seconds, he reached the monster's massive shoulder. With a surge of energy, a massive pair of blood-red wings unfurled behind him, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. He soared into the sky, his presence a fierce, unstoppable force. Then he dove straight toward the monster like a blazing star hurtling from the heavens. He swung his blade with devastating precision. From the arc of his slash, a colossal spectral phoenix emerged, wreathed in an ethereal, ghostly flame. A thunderous boom reverberated, shaking the very air. The phoenix collided directly with the monster's head, an explosion of force. But the blow didn't finish it. Half its skull was obliterated, yet within moments it regenerated, its flesh twisting back into place. Its eyes locked onto Zyro Q's weapon, a cold, calculating gaze. That blade, Feya, why is that in your hands? Zyro Q said nothing, his gaze cold and unyielding like stone. So you're a monster too, it murmured. Its rage ebbed away, replaced by a calm, almost serene voice. We don't have to fight. From its palm, a green vine shot forth, stretching skyward. A twisted attempt to bind you, me, and all beings below into one shared bond. We can do this. We can change this rotting, shadow-drenched world together. Item name, Core of the Great Blight. Description: only those chosen by the Blight may wield this core. Fuse it with your body, and you will inherit its boundless, life-fueled power. Interesting, the monster mused. The final reward of the quest given ahead of time. I'll admit that is tempting. You want it too, don't you? The monster whispered. To tear down this lifeless, filthy world. Let's run together, through the cracks between mountains and valleys, to where rivers meet the ocean. If this world contains darkness that no light can ever reach, then let's burn it down as well. Join us. Let's create a new world together. Zyro Q stared back at it, silent. But inside, a storm raged. Protect humanity, cooperate with monsters. No, I've never cared about that, Zyro Q thought. Before my rebirth, I was already tired of it all. After returning to life, I have one goal, to kill every last monster. If that means becoming a monster myself, becoming a weapon of the system, so be it. All I need now is one thing, power. Enough to match any monster and crush them. The monster sighed, no answer coming. I see now, the monster sneered. You're just here to eliminate me. Then come prove it. Prove whether you destroy me or I destroy this filthy world. Suddenly, the monster's hair flared with a pulsating green glow. In an instant, its head unraveled, transforming into dozens of writhing vines, all shooting straight at Zyro Q. In the blink of an eye, Zyro Q was ensnared, tangled and bound tight. But in that split second, Zyro Q retracted his wings, a sharp glint of resolve in his eyes. Activating his spider demon leg skill, he tore himself free with savage force. Before he could even catch his breath, the monster's enormous mouth opened wide, lunging to devour him whole. Zyro Q was swallowed whole, engulfed by the suffocating darkness inside the beast's rotting flesh. But in the very next instant, he erupted from the back of its head, blood spraying in every direction, staining the sky crimson. These massive monsters, he had slain tens of thousands in his past life, each one falling beneath his blade. But they always came back, relentless, unstoppable. Why? Because no one had ever found their true core. If the brain wasn't the core, then there was only one other place it could be: the chest. Without hesitation, Zyro Q swung his blade, a deadly arc toward its heart. Blinding arcs of steel erupted from the creature's writhing body. The beast convulsed violently, as if trying to expel him. Then, with an earth-shattering explosion, its body erupted into a rain of flesh and bone. Zyro Q didn't pause, didn't flinch. His blade flashed again and again, each strike faster and more precise than the last. Then in the chaos, he saw it, a faint glow pulsing from deep inside the creature. In that instant, he knew the core. With a fierce roar, he lunged, thrusting his blade deep into the heart of the beast. The sword drove through flesh, through pulsing power, piercing the very heart of the beast. But as the blade sank deep, his strength faltered and his vision blurred. His body faltered, falling like a broken comet toward the earth below. And then a teasing voice echoed gently in his ears. You know, I think you might actually be hotter than Masked Lord. Relax, the monster whispered softly. You really did kill me. What's left of me is just fading remnants of power. Just then, a blazing streak of fire cut across the sky. The Federation had made its final decision: drop the nuke, erase the monster, and sacrifice the entire city in the process. The monster's gaze turned toward the heavens. So ruthless. Not just us monsters. Even the entire city is expendable to them. Well, if I'm going to die, then let the world see, just once, what kind of bastards those Federation scum truly are. The ones who tormented the Masked Lord. With that, little Qinlu sank back into the creature's massive, shattered form. The monster began siphoning the last remnants of the city's green energy. It grew at an unnatural pace. Its final act: catch the nuke, use its body to shield everything else. In mere seconds, It morphed into a colossal tree, its roots and branches piercing the clouds like a living monument. And then impact. The nuke struck with a deafening roar. A cataclysmic explosion tore the sky asunder. At the last possible moment, the monster hurled Xiao-Q away from the blast center. It wrapped him tightly in its vines, shielding him from the searing wave of heat and destruction. The nuclear blast bloomed into a towering mushroom cloud, consuming the city in a fiery abyss. The giant tree burned and cracked, its form breaking apart as it sacrificed itself to block the nuclear inferno. Director, high-energy readings have ceased. The Cataclysm-class entity is gone. One of the survivors stared upward, disbelief etched on their face. Did that Cataclysm-class monster actually throw itself into the nuke? The massive tree began to dissolve, its limbs disintegrating into brilliant light, vanishing into the heavens. Countless petals rained down from the sky, drifting gently over the ruins of the city. A little girl giggled as she stretched her hands toward the delicate petals, trying to catch them. A man nearby shouted in panic, "Don't touch those. They could mutate you." But as time passed, the girl remained unharmed. The petals were harmless after all. Elsewhere in the city, Xiao-Q sat beneath a shattered stone slab, cradling Qian Liu in his arms. He gazed down at her, a look of deep pain in his eyes. "To think you'd give your life to save humanity." Qian Liu's eyes fluttered open, gazing up at the falling petals. "So this is what spring looks like." And then she faded into a soft green light, vanishing from his arms. Monster Path, Main Quest, the rebirth of the Great Blight completed. Reward granted, Core of the Blight. A green, pulsing heart began to form in Xiao-Q's hand. It was the core of the Great Blight, and it had once been in Qian Liu's heart. Without a word, Xiao-Q absorbed the core into his own body. He activated the teleportation sequence, and in an instant, he vanished into the light. The cataclysm in Day City had been eradicated. Across the world, viewers watching the live stream erupted into cheers. But just as the crowd chanted, "Long live humanity," something strange began to unfold. The flower-like monsters started changing back. They turned into humans again. Most of the crowd froze, staring at their screens, while a few began to piece together the chilling reality. Those wiped out in the blast, they were all human. Back in Star City, the Federation's heart, the chairman muttered in frustration. Public opinion's under control for now, but this, total disaster. Too many eyes were watching. If they didn't spin a story, things would get out of hand, especially after using the media to oust the masked lord. Public anger still simmered. The chairman collapsed into his chair, exhausted. The nuke took out 1,000, but it wasn't enough. A few more casualties, and Hiao's seat would have been ours. Senator Walter chuckled. "The masked lord, huh? Looks like the answer's simple. We all signed off on using the nuke. But let's not forget, he's still got some explaining to do." "That doesn't add up, he wasn't even there," Song shot back. "Exactly, and that's why it's his fault. If he'd shown up, none of this would have happened. The Federation, all of humanity, had poured resources and trust into him, and he just bylaid, leaving them hanging. It was supposed to be his job to clear the threat in Day City, but his selfish absence, his disregard for the truth, caused this disaster. Everything traced back to him." The room went silent. Senator Song had a knack for turning anything into a noble cause. "Don't worry, Chairman. I've got the messy stuff covered." The chairman didn't flinch. "This isn't about politics, it's about power. If we had just a fraction of the masked lord's strength, we wouldn't be here. What's the status of Project Asahi?" Ever since specimen number 268, progress had been skyrocketing. Some subjects could now last longer, as long as they kept their neo-human state in check. Sure, once the transformation kicks in, their bodies fall apart fast. But the theory holds, humans and monsters can merge. Chairman, if the masked lord saved us from extinction, you'll lead us to a new golden age. If humanity could harness monster strength, if everyone became a weapon, survival wouldn't be enough. We'd be gods. Records from the old days showed that this region once stretched across parts of Africa, South America, and even Antarctica. But in the 100-year upheaval, tectonic shifts that usually took millions of years happened in a century, almost wiping out humanity. Before the masked lord led the charge, the demon front was a desolate wasteland. Monsters poured out of the rifts, not just claiming the demon realm, but raiding the outside world, wiping out human settlements left and right. Known as the demon front, but more commonly called the source of calamity, it was the birthplace of every disaster. Humanity only dared to take back the land when a masked lord arrived, like a divine force. He wiped out a monster's territory, turning chaos into order. From survival to a solid front, it was all thanks to him. At a rift entrance, a special ops team waited. Their mission, to greet someone. A bald soldier mumbled, "So, who's gonna tell Captain Jiang?" "You do it, you've known her longer." "Not a chance, I'm terrible at this. I'll only make it worse." Right then, a figure emerged from the portal. She just soloed a high-tier rift with a level 7 boss in under 30 minutes. Captain Jiang Ling, level 7 herself. A masked girl stepped out. Her face, ice cold. Her presence, lethal intent, like a ticking time bomb. She noticed the shift in her team's expressions right away. "Why do you all look like that?" "Captain, we need to tell you something." A Cataclysm-class monster showed up in Day City. Jiang Ling calmly cleaned her weapon, then asked, "Was it dealt with?" "Yes, but your father, Commander Jiang, fell in battle. He died with honor. Truly, he lived up to the city's last line of defense. You can check the online comments if you want." Jiang Ling stood unwavering. Her voice didn't falter. "Understood, take me to the next rift." "Is Captain Jiang really going to be okay?" "Maybe," one of them muttered. "You know how it is. She controls lightning, but Frozen Heart isn't just a nickname." How did that old verse go? "Only the heartless step into still waters unshaken by ripples." Maybe she left her emotions behind a long time ago. If you're that bored, I can always assign you both to penitence duty. Rift generation on the demon front was way faster than anywhere else on Earth. Only elite teams like Jiang Ling's could keep it in check, and the stronger the team, the heavier the load. "Captain Jiang, maybe this time we could join you in the rift. It's been ages since we fought by your side. We're basically your cheerleaders now." Captain Jiang turned and shot him a cold glare. "Are you saying I can't handle it alone?" He panicked. "No, I would never say that." "S." She didn't say another word and stepped into the rift alone. One squad mate shivered as she vanished. She's terrifying. Her aura's like a high-tier monster. Takes a steel will to be that strong at her age. In ancient times, they'd call that Tao heart. Honestly, I think our captain's a monster. One that doesn't feel emotion. Or pain. Inside the rift, Jiang Ling moved like a machine. Lightning crackled from the weapon in her hand. She halted ahead. All the monsters were dead.